Have you ever noticed something strange that starts showing up more clearly after 60, where a meal that is supposed to feel healthy doesn't always lead to stable energy, and instead sometimes leaves you feeling weak, slightly shaky, or just off, even when nothing about the food seems wrong? And what makes this more confusing is that it doesn't happen every time, which is exactly why most people ignore it at first. Because the common explanation is simple. Eat less sugar, eat the right foods, avoid the wrong ones, but in real life, the pattern doesn't stay that clean. Sometimes everything is fine. Sometimes it isn't. And that inconsistency is where the real question starts to appear. So the question isn't just what you are eating. It's why the same kind of meal can feel completely different depending on the situation your body is already in. And once you start noticing that, something small begins to shift in how you see everyday food choices. Most people assume low blood sugar issues after 60 are only about intake. Too little food, too much sugar, or missing meals. But that explanation starts to break down when you look at real experiences. Because many people are eating properly, yet still notice moments of sudden weakness, lightheadedness, or that strange drop in energy that doesn't fully match what they just ate. And that's where the uncomfortable part begins, not because something dramatic is happening, but because the usual explanation doesn't fully account for the inconsistency. So instead of one simple cause, what starts to appear is something less obvious, patterns that don't show up in single moments, but across repeated days. This is where things become slightly counterintuitive. Because after 60, the body doesn't always respond to food in a fixed or identical way anymore. Two meals that look the same on paper can lead to slightly different internal responses depending on what state the body is already in before processing them. And most people don't notice that difference immediately because it doesn't feel dramatic enough to question. It just feels like, maybe I'm a bit tired today, or maybe it was just that meal. Until it starts happening again in different situations. And this is where the real issue quietly forms. Not from one strong reaction, but from small ones that don't feel connected. A slight dip here, a mild weakness there, a moment of feeling not quite right that passes quickly. Individually, none of these feel important. So the brain treats them as separate events, not a system. And that's exactly how a pattern stays invisible even when it's repeating. And once you step back far enough, something becomes harder to ignore. It's not just what the food is. And it's not just when it is eaten in a simple sense. It's the condition the body is already in at the moment it receives it. Because the same meal can land differently depending on what internal state it enters into. If the system is already slightly unstable, the response doesn't follow the food alone. It follows the combination of food plus condition. And that's where the simple idea of healthy versus unhealthy food starts to feel incomplete. This is where blueberries become useful, not as a solution but as a reference point. Because they are often considered safe or stable. Yet even something like that doesn't produce exactly the same feeling for everyone or every time. And the key detail is not the fruit itself, but the context it's placed in. Timing, surrounding meals, and internal state all shift how it is experienced. So what looks like a consistent food is actually part of an inconsistent system. And once you see that, it becomes harder to unsee it. And this is where a common misunderstanding usually happens. People try to fix the issue by changing one thing at a time, switching foods, removing certain fruits, or trying different combinations. And sometimes it feels like it helps, briefly. But then the same uneven energy patterns return in slightly different ways. Not identical, not predictable, but familiar enough to be frustrating. Because the real issue was never isolated choices. It was how multiple small conditions were stacking together over time without being noticed as one pattern. And once you see it from that angle, something important changes. The goal stops being finding the perfect food or the perfect rule. and starts becoming recognizing how easily small daily variations can change the way the body responds. Because most of these moments are not obvious individually. They only make sense when you stop looking at them one by one and start seeing how they connect over time. And for many people, this isn't something completely new. It's something they may have already experienced, just without ever linking the pattern behind it. And once that connection is made, even ordinary meals start to feel slightly different in how you notice them going forward.